He thought of his mother, Kinna, and the warnings she had given him about power corrupting the heart. "What's the price?" he asked warily. The spirit's laughter rippled through the air.
The river requires only your loyalty. Pledge yourself to the deep current, and you will be its master. All it asks in return is that you never waver.
Zane stared into the water. The temptation was overwhelming. He thought of Toby, the villagers, and the prophecy that cast doubt on his role. This was his chance to secure his place, to ensure he was remembered not as a destroyer but as the one who saved Amaji. "I accept," he whispered. As soon as Zane spoke the words, the river roared to life. The water swirled violently, rising into the air like a towering serpent. From its depths emerged a figure, a tall, shadowy being with eyes that glowed like molten gold. Its form was fluid, constantly shifting, yet its presence was solid and commanding.
Zane of Amaji,
the spirit intoned, its voice resonating like thunder.
You have made your choice. Now, take the power that is yours.
The spirit extended a hand toward Zane, and he hesitated only for a moment before stepping forward. The moment their hands touched, a surge of energy shot through Zane's body. He gasped, feeling the river's strength coursing through him, its depths, its currents, its endless might. The spirit smiled, a cruel edge to its expression.
You are now bound to me, Zane. Use this power wisely, or it will consume you.
As soon as Kinna spoke the words, the air around them seemed to change. The moonlight dimmed, and the river's roaring subsided, as if holding its breath in the wake of her decision. The villagers, once filled with uncertainty, now stood in stunned silence. They had expected Kinna to choose Toby, the beloved child, the one they believed could bring peace. But her choice had been Zane, the child they feared. Zane, who stood beside her, had not moved. His eyes, which had once glowed with an almost magical light, now appeared calm, almost too calm. His expression was unreadable, and his lips remained sealed, as though he understood something the others did not. For a moment, the village seemed frozen in time, as if awaiting the river god's judgment. And then, the river answered. With a mighty rush, the waters surged up again, higher than before. The villagers stepped back in terror, but Zane stood his ground, his feet planted firmly on the riverbank. Kinna held her breath, praying that she had made the right decision. Efua's voice boomed across the water once more. The time for fear has passed, Kinna. You have chosen the one who will lead you into the future. The river began to calm, the waters gently lapping at the shore. The villagers were still, unsure whether they should cheer or mourn. Had Kinna made a choice that would save them, or one that would doom them all? Zane's expression softened as the river returned to its normal state, its waters now tranquil and clear. He turned to Kinna, his eyes filled with a deep understanding. "Thank you, Mama," he whispered. Kinna's heart ached as she looked at him. She had chosen him, but the fear in her chest had not disappeared. She didn't know what the future held, or what the consequences of her choice would be. All she knew was that she had placed her trust in her son, and in the river. The dawn came slowly, its golden light creeping over the village of Amaji. The villagers had spent the night by the river, watching, waiting, uncertain of what the morning would bring. Some had stayed awake to watch for any sign of divine intervention, others had retreated to their homes, their hearts filled with fear. Kinna sat by her hut, her hands folded in her lap as she stared into the distance. The events of the previous night seemed like a dream, a surreal moment in which she had made a choice that would change everything. She had chosen Zane, but what would become of Toby, the child she had not chosen? She felt a gentle tap on her shoulder, and turned to see Toby standing beside her. His face was pale, but there was no anger in his eyes, only a quiet sadness. "Mama," he said softly, his voice tinged with confusion. "Why did you choose him over me?" Kinna's heart broke as she looked into Toby's eyes. "I didn't want to choose between you," she said, her voice trembling. But the river spoke, and the prophecy was clear. Zane is the one the river has chosen. Toby looked down at the ground for a moment, then met her gaze again. "I'll always love you, Mama," he said quietly. "But I don't know if I'll ever understand why you chose him over me." Kinna pulled him into her arms, holding him tight. "You are both my sons. I love you both," she whispered. "And I will protect you both, no matter what." In the days that followed, the village was quiet, an uneasy silence that hung over everything. Zane, though still a child, carried himself with an air of quiet power. The villagers no longer whispered in fear when he passed by, but they did so in awe. It was clear to them that Zane was different, that the river had chosen him for a reason. But it was Toby, the child who had been left behind, who struggled the most. Toby tried to go about his usual routines, helping the fishermen and playing with the younger children, but something inside him had changed. The love and admiration he had once received from the village now felt like a weight, as if they were offering him pity rather than affection. He could feel the eyes of the villagers upon him, not as a son of the river god, but as someone who had failed to live up to the prophecy. One evening, Toby stood by the river, his hands clenched at his sides. The water shimmered in the fading light of the day, its surface smooth and calm. He could hear the sound of the river singing, as it always did, but it no longer felt like a comforting lullaby. Instead, it felt like a distant, unapproachable force, one that had chosen his brother over him. "I was supposed to be the one," he muttered to himself. "The one who would protect the village. But now, Zane has taken that place." A voice interrupted his thoughts, soft and familiar. "You are not meant to follow the river, Toby," came a voice behind him. Toby turned to see Ian, the priestess, standing beside him. Her face was as serene as always, her eyes full of wisdom. "I don't understand," Toby said, his voice filled with frustration. "Why didn't I get the chance? Why was Zane chosen?" Ian smiled gently and placed a hand on his shoulder. "The river does not choose based on who is loved more or who is stronger. It chooses the one who has the power to transform. Zane has that power. But you, Toby, you have something else." "What do you mean?" Toby asked, his brow furrowed. "You have the power to unite," Ian said, her eyes gleaming. "While Zane may control the river, it is your heart that can heal the village. You will be the one to bring the people together." Toby looked at her, unsure of what to say. "But how can I do that? I'm just me." "You are everything you need to be, Toby," Ian said softly. "Do not doubt yourself. The river has not rejected you. It has simply given you a different path." Toby stood in silence, the weight of Ian's words settling over him like a warm blanket. He had spent so long trying to be the hero, trying to live up to the prophecy, that he had forgotten who he truly was. Perhaps the river had chosen Zane for a reason, but that didn't mean Toby's journey had ended. In his heart, he knew that he, too, had a part to play. While Toby struggled to find his place, Zane's connection to the river only grew stronger. He spent long hours by the water, speaking with it, listening to it, learning its ways. The river responded to him as it had never responded to anyone before, its waters obeying his command. One evening, as the village gathered by the river for a feast, Zane stood at the water's edge, his eyes closed in concentration. The villagers watched in awe as the river parted before him, a wide path of water stretching from one bank to the other. Zane walked across the water as if it were solid ground, his feet barely touching the surface. The villagers gasped, some even kneeling in reverence. Kinna watched her son with a mixture of pride and fear. What had her choice set into motion? Zane reached the center of the river and paused, turning to face the villagers. "This is the power of the river," he said, his voice calm and strong. "I am its chosen child, and I will protect you all." The crowd remained silent, their awe mingled with fear. The river was powerful, but so was Zane, and the villagers knew that power could be both a blessing and a curse. In the days that followed Zane's display of power, the village of Amaji became more divided. Zane's connection to the river was undeniable, and the villagers who had once looked at him with fear now revered him. Every morning, he would stand by the river, calling forth storms or calming the waters at will. The villagers watched in awe, some offering sacrifices, others simply hoping that his power would continue to protect them. But Toby felt the distance between him and the rest of the village growing. He no longer felt the familiar warmth of their affection. Instead, he felt as though he was a shadow, cast aside by the very people he had once helped. One afternoon, while walking through the village, Toby found a quiet corner by the river. The same river that had once sung to him now felt distant and cold, its surface dark and mysterious. He sat down on the smooth stones by the water's edge, his heart heavy with uncertainty. "I don't know who I am anymore," he whispered to the river, as if it could hear him. "Everyone expects me to be something I'm not. They want me to be like Zane. But I'm not him." The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment, Toby thought he heard a voice, a soft, soothing voice calling his name. "Toby," it said. "You are not meant to walk the same path as Zane. You have your own journey to take." Toby looked around, startled. No one was there. He stood up, his heart racing. Had he imagined it? But the voice continued, this time clearer, more real. "I am the spirit of the river's heart," the voice said. "I have watched you since you were born, Toby. You are not meant to be a wielder of power like your brother. You are meant to be a healer. A unifier." Toby's breath caught in his throat. "A healer?" he asked, his voice trembling. "How can I heal anything? I have no powers like Zane. I'm just Toby." "No, Toby," the voice replied. "You have the power to heal hearts, to mend the broken bonds between the people. You are the one who can bring peace to the village. You must trust in yourself." Toby sat down again, his hands trembling as the words settled in his mind. A healer. Could he truly be one? He had never thought of himself in such a way. But the river had spoken, he had always felt a connection to it, even if he couldn't command it like Zane. Perhaps, just perhaps, he had a different kind of gift. While Toby wrestled with his newfound purpose, the village of Amaji was becoming increasingly uneasy. Zane's power over the river had only grown stronger, and with it, the villagers began to rely on him more and more. They called upon him to stop storms, to calm floods, to bring abundance to their crops. The river god, through Zane, had become both protector and ruler. But power, as they say, is a double-edged sword. One evening, as the villagers gathered for another feast by the river, a loud cry broke the air. "The river! The river is rising!" Panic spread through the crowd as the waters surged higher than ever before, crashing violently against the banks. Zane stood by the river, his face pale and strained. He extended his hands, trying to calm the waters, but the river seemed to fight him, its waves crashing harder, faster, as if rejecting his control. Kinna rushed to Zane's side, her eyes wide with fear. "Zane! What's happening?" "I don't know," Zane said, his voice trembling. "I've never felt the river like this. It's angry." The river churned and roared, as though it had a life of its own. The villagers fled in terror, scrambling to higher ground as the water began to flood the village, submerging homes and fields. Toby watched from a distance, his heart heavy with the weight of the unfolding disaster. He knew Zane had the power to stop the river, but why hadn't he been able to? And then, something inside him stirred. A deep, quiet understanding. He turned and ran towards the river. As Toby approached the river, he could feel its power surging, its anger almost palpable in the air. The waters were wild, thrashing against the shore, pushing toward the village with the force of a storm. Zane was still standing at the water's edge, his hands raised, his face drawn with concentration. "Toby, get back!" Zane shouted, but Toby ignored him. He had to act. He could feel the river's heart calling to him, whispering in a language only he understood. Without thinking, Toby stepped into the water, his feet sinking into the mud. The river felt cold against his skin, but there was no fear in his heart. He closed his eyes and reached out, as if he could touch the very soul of the water. "I hear you," he whispered, his voice soft but steady. "I hear your pain. I know you are angry, but please, do not destroy us. We are one with you, just as you are one with us. Let us heal together." For a long moment, there was nothing. The river seemed to still, its violent movements slowing as if considering Toby's words. And then, something extraordinary happened. The water around him began to calm, the waves retreating as though drawn back by an unseen force. The river settled, its once violent waters now gentle and still, like a deep breath exhaled in relief. Toby opened his eyes and looked around. The flood waters had receded, leaving the village untouched. The villagers, who had been watching from a distance, were now cautiously returning to the river's edge. They stared at Toby in disbelief. Zane, who had been watching in stunned silence, stepped forward. His eyes were wide, his face pale. "Toby, how did you do that?" Toby smiled, though there was a sadness in his eyes. "I didn't do anything, Zane. The river didn't want to hurt us. It just needed to be heard." The villagers approached cautiously, murmuring in awe. They had seen the power of Zane, but they had never seen this. Toby had calmed the river with nothing but his words, his heart, and his understanding. "I didn't choose you for your power, Toby," Kinna said, her voice soft as she walked up to him. "But now I see what you have to offer. You are the one who will guide us through the storms, the one who will heal the rift between us and the river." Toby looked at her, his heart swelling with pride. "I'm ready, Mama," he said, his voice steady. "I will help our people. I will heal what has been broken." The days that followed were a turning point for Amaji. The village, which had been divided between the fear of Zane's power and the uncertainty of Toby's place, began to unite once more. Toby's quiet strength and ability to calm the river's anger brought a sense of peace, while Zane's connection to the river remained a powerful force of protection. Kinna watched her sons with a sense of pride, her heart filled with hope. They were both needed in the village, though in different ways. Zane, the one with the power to control the river, and Toby, the one with the heart to heal the people. But even as the village began to rebuild and find its balance, something in the air had changed. The river had not calmed for long, it was only a matter of time before its restless spirit would stir again. And when it did, Amaji would need both brothers, not as rivals, but as partners, to face whatever the future held. The river was calm, but Zane was not. Every day, he felt the weight of expectation pressing heavier upon his shoulders. Though the villagers praised him for his strength, they now looked at Toby with a kind of reverence Zane had never known. Zane's power could command storms, yet it was Toby's quiet words that had soothed the raging waters. Late one night, Zane stood by the river's edge, the moonlight casting his reflection onto the shimmering surface. He clenched his fists, anger and frustration bubbling within him like the river's currents. "I am the son of the river god," he muttered to himself. "This is my birthright. Why can't they see that I am the one who will lead them?" The river rippled, and for a moment, Zane thought he heard a voice.
"They do not understand your greatness."
He froze. The voice was low and melodic, like the hum of the river itself. Zane glanced around, but no one was there. "Who's there?" he demanded. The voice chuckled softly.
"I am one who has watched you, Zane. I see the fire in your heart. The river chose you because of your strength. And yet, they do not see it."
Zane stepped closer to the water. "Who are you?"
"I am the spirit of the deep current,"
the voice replied.
"The power that flows beneath the surface of the river. The villagers worship the river god, but it is I who give the river its might. I can help you, Zane. Together, we can show them your true power."
Zane hesitated, his heart pounding. "Why would you help me?" The spirit's voice softened, tempting and soothing.
because I see what you are capable of. You are not meant to share your destiny with Toby. You are meant to rule, to protect the village with power no one can question. But to do that, you must embrace your full potential.
What do you mean? Zane asked, stepping closer to the water's edge. The current swirled, forming shapes that almost looked like hands reaching toward him.
There is a pact,
the spirit said.
A bond that will give you control over the river, its depths, and its fury. You will be unstoppable, Zane. No one, not even Toby, will dare to challenge you.
Zane's breath quickened. This was what he had been yearning for, a way to prove himself, to solidify his place as the savior of the village. But a part of him hesitated. He thought of his mother, Kinna, and the warnings she had given him about power corrupting the heart. What's the price? He asked warily. The spirit's laughter rippled through the air.
The river requires only your loyalty. Pledge yourself to the deep current, and you will be its master. All it asks in return is that you never waver.
Zane stared into the water. The temptation was overwhelming. He thought of Toby, the villagers, and the prophecy that cast doubt on his role. This was his chance to secure his place, to ensure he was remembered not as a destroyer but as the one who saved Amaji. I accept, he whispered. As soon as Zane spoke the words, the river roared to life. The water swirled violently, rising into the air like a towering serpent. From its depths emerged a figure, a tall, shadowy being with eyes that glowed like molten gold. Its form was fluid, constantly shifting, yet its presence was solid and commanding.
Zane of Amaji,
the spirit intoned, its voice resonating like thunder.
You have made your choice. Now, take the power that is yours.
The spirit extended a hand toward Zane, and he hesitated only for a moment before stepping forward. The moment their hands touched, a surge of energy shot through Zane's body. He gasped, feeling the river's strength coursing through him, its depths, its currents, its endless might. The spirit smiled, a cruel edge to its expression.
You are now bound to me, Zane. Use this power wisely, or it will consume you.
Before Zane could respond, the spirit sank back into the river, leaving him alone on the shore. He stood there, trembling with exhilaration and fear. He felt different, stronger. The river seemed to respond to his very thoughts, the currents bending to his will. But as the waters calmed, a strange unease settled in his chest. What had he just done? The next morning, Zane returned to the village, his newfound power thrumming beneath his skin. The villagers noticed immediately that something was different. His presence was commanding, his voice deeper, more resonant. When a storm gathered on the horizon, Zane simply raised his hand, and the clouds scattered as though afraid of him. The villagers were in awe, but Toby watched from the sidelines, his brow furrowed. Something about Zane's aura felt wrong. The connection he had once felt with his brother now seemed distant, almost severed. Zane, Toby said quietly that evening as they stood outside their home. What happened to you? Zane smirked, the flicker of a shadow crossing his face. I embraced my destiny, Toby. The river gave me the power I need to protect this village. The river? Toby asked, his voice tinged with unease. Or something else? Zane's eyes darkened. You wouldn't understand. At first, the village flourished under Zane's newfound power. The crops grew abundantly, the storms were kept at bay, and the villagers praised him as their savior. But soon, strange things began to happen. The river grew restless, its waters darker and colder. Fish that had once been plentiful began to vanish, and the villagers noticed an ominous stillness in the air. Those who ventured too close to the water spoke of whispers and shadows beneath the surface. Toby grew increasingly worried. He could sense the river's unease, its currents no longer singing in harmony but thrumming with a chaotic, angry energy. One night, as Toby stood by the river, he heard the voice of the river's heart once more. Your brother has made a grave mistake, it whispered. The deep current is not to be trusted. Its power comes with a cost. What cost? Toby asked, his voice trembling. The destruction of everything you hold dear.